17 worst and most cruel parents in Golden Age Hollywood history. Golden Age Hollywood sold childhood as sunshine songs and spotless family smiles. But behind some of those famous faces were parents who pushed too hard, took too much, and left wounds the studios never wanted exposed. Tonight, the family myths finally crack open. Follow and subscribe to Classic Hollywood Legends for the stories Hollywood buried. Maria Gurdon. Maria Gurdon was Natalie Wood's mother and one of old Hollywood's most forceful stage parents. Natalie was still a little girl when her childhood began turning into work. Maria believed her daughter was destined for fame, and once Hollywood showed interest, that belief became the center of their family life. Natalie was taken to auditions, coached on how to act, and pushed to behave like a professional before she could understand what the business wanted from her. The family's story included a strange warning from a fortune teller. Natalie would become famous, but dark water would be connected to her fate. Maria did not walk away from Hollywood after hearing that. She pushed harder toward the fame. The tragedy was not only that Natalie worked young, it was that she learned early to please adults, hide fear, and perform through discomfort. Biographical accounts have described Maria as controlling, ambitious, and deeply involved in shaping Natalie's career. On sets, Natalie was expected to deliver emotion, charm, and obedience. Childhood became something scheduled around cameras, publicity, and adult decisions. How much choice does a child really have when a parent turns fame into destiny? Natalie became a major star first through films like Miracle on 34th Street, then later through Rebel Without a Cause, Splendor in the Grass, and West Side Story. From the outside, it looked like success. Inside the story, there was pressure, fear, and a mother who seemed unable to separate love from control. Maria Gurdon helped build Natalie Wood's career, but the cost was heavy. Natalie became famous before she had the space to grow up privately. That is what makes this story painful. The world saw a beautiful child star, while behind her was a mother treating her daughter's life like something Hollywood had a right to own. George Francis Temple and Gertrude Amelia Temple. George Francis Temple and Gertrude Amelia Temple were the parents of Shirley Temple, the most famous child star of the 1930s. Their daughter's smile became a national comfort during the Great Depression, but behind that smile was a childhood turned into full-time work. Gertrude recognized Shirley's charm early and enrolled her in dance lessons when she was very young. By the time Shirley reached Hollywood, her curls, dimples, and bright personality had become part of a carefully managed image. Gertrude was often close by, fixing Shirley's hair and helping maintain the sweet little girl look audiences loved. George handled much of the business side of her career. The tragedy was not that Shirley became famous. It was that fame swallowed the normal life she should have had. She worked long hours, carried adult expectations, and became one of the biggest earners in Hollywood before she was old enough to understand money, contracts, or control. Studio life demanded discipline, obedience, and a smile even when she was tired. Who was protecting Shirley Temple when everyone around her was benefiting from her fame? Years later, the financial truth became painful. Shirley had earned millions as a child star, but when she reached adulthood, only a small amount was left under her control. Much of her fortune had been lost through expenses, taxes, and poor management. George Temple was widely blamed for mishandling her money, even if the system itself also failed child performers badly. Shirley Temple survived that childhood better than many child stars, but survival does not erase what happened. Her parents helped open the door to fame, yet they did not fully protect the child who had to live inside it. Ethel Marion Milne Gum. Ethel Marion Milne Gum was Judy Garland's mother and the driving force behind her earliest years in show business. Judy was born Frances Ethel Gum in 1922 and before she became Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, she was already performing with her sisters on vaudeville stages. Ethel wanted success for her daughters, but with Judy that ambition became especially intense. She managed, pushed, corrected, and kept the work moving even when Judy was still a child. Performing was not treated like a hobby. It became the family's income identity and way forward. The tragedy deepened when Judy entered MGM as a teenager. The studio did not see her as naturally glamorous like some of its young stars. Executives criticized her weight, her looks, and her body, while demanding long hours and constant energy. Later accounts describe how Judy was given pills to keep her awake and other pills to help her sleep, a pattern that damaged her for the rest of her life. Ethel has often been portrayed as someone who did not protect Judy from that system, and in some accounts helped enforce it. Who was Judy Garland supposed to trust? When both her mother and the studio needed her to keep performing, Judy became one of the most beloved entertainers in American history. But the cost started early. Her voice made audiences feel warmth and wonder. Her private life carried exhaustion, insecurity, and dependency that began long before adulthood. Ethel Gum did not create MGM's cruelty by herself, but she helped place Judy inside a machine that used childhood as fuel. That is what makes her role so painful. She was the mother standing closest to Judy, yet protection often seemed to come second to the career. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby was one of America's most trusted entertainers, known for his smooth voice, calm screen presence, and long career in music, radio, and film. To millions of people, he sounded like warmth itself. At home, according to his eldest son, Gary Crosby, the story was much colder. Gary Crosby's 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, described a household ruled by fear, strict discipline, and emotional distance. He wrote that Bing expected obedience, control, and public perfection from his sons. The Crosby boys were not ordinary children growing up quietly. They were the children of a national star, expected to look happy, behave properly, and protect the family image. The most painful part of the story is that Bing's public reputation was built on comfort. He sang songs that made families feel safe, appeared in beloved films, and became closely tied to the sound of American holidays. But Gary's account described a father whose private discipline could be harsh and frightening. What happens to a child when the whole country loves the father he is afraid of? The family did not speak with one voice. Some of Bing's children confirmed that the home could be severe. Others later said Gary's book was unfair or exaggerated. That disagreement matters because it shows how complicated family memory can be, especially inside a famous household, where pain, loyalty, and reputation all collide. Bing Crosby died in 1977, before Gary's memoir forced the public to reconsider the man behind the voice. His achievements in entertainment remain important, but the fatherhood story cannot be ignored. For some of his children, the man America heard as gentle was also the man they remembered with fear, distance, and unresolved hurt. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was one of MGM's most powerful stars, known for discipline, ambition, and a screen image built on strength. In public, she also presented herself as a devoted adoptive mother, a woman who had created a family after building one of Hollywood's longest careers. Crawford adopted several children, including Christina and Christopher. To magazines, the home looked controlled, polished, and respectable. That image mattered. In old Hollywood, motherhood could soften a star's reputation and make her seem stable, generous, and trustworthy. Crawford understood image better than almost anyone. The tragedy came after her death. In 1978, Christina Crawford published Mommy Dearest, describing a childhood marked by fear, harsh punishment, emotional cruelty, and constant control. The book accused Joan of treating motherhood like another performance, where the children were expected to obey, look perfect, and protect the star's public image. What happens when a child grows up inside a house where love feels like another studio rule? The story became even more complicated because not everyone in the family agreed. Some of Crawford's other children disputed Christina's account and defended Joan. That matters because the full truth of any family can be difficult to prove from the outside. But Christina's memoir changed Crawford's legacy forever. After the book and the later film, many people could no longer look at Joan Crawford only as a glamorous survivor. Her public motherhood had cracked open, revealing a darker version of life behind the gates. Joan Crawford died in 1977 at 73. Her career remains important, but the image of the perfect Hollywood mother never fully recovered from what her own daughter said happened at home. Loretta Young. Loretta Young was one of Hollywood's most admired actresses, known for her beauty, religious image, and carefully protected reputation. But the most painful story connected to her was not about a film role. It was about her daughter, Judy Lewis. In 1935, while working on Call of the Wild Young, became pregnant. Clark Gable was the father, but the truth could not be allowed into public view. Young was unmarried, Gable was married, and old Hollywood treated that kind of scandal as a threat to careers, contracts, and public image. Later family accounts have also described the circumstances around the pregnancy in a much darker way than old studio gossip once suggested. Young disappeared from public life, gave birth privately, and later presented Judy to the world as an adopted child. Judy grew up believing the official story. The people around her saw the resemblance to Gable, but the truth stayed locked away. Judy later wrote that even her ears became part of the cover-up, with surgery used to make the resemblance less obvious. What does it do to a child when her own identity is treated like a scandal? Judy did not learn the full truth until adulthood. By then, the lie had shaped years of confusion: why she looked different, why people whispered, why her place in the family never felt completely clear. Loretta may have believed she was protecting everyone, but protection came at Judy's expense. Loretta Young remained a respected star for many years. But this part of her life shows how old Hollywood's obsession with reputation could reach into a child's most basic truth: who she was, where she came from, and why no one would say it out loud. Jackie Coogan's mother and stepfather. Jackie Coogan's mother, Lillian Dolliver, Coogan Bernstein, and his stepfather, Arthur Bernstein, became central figures in one of Hollywood's most important child star scandals. Jackie was not just another working child. After appearing with Charlie Chaplin in The Kid, he became one of the first true child celebrities in film history. As a boy, Jackie worked under the pressure of fame, publicity, and long studio demands. He earned enormous money for the 1920s, with reports often placing his childhood earnings in the millions. Audiences saw a charming little actor with a sad face and natural screen presence. At home, the money he made was controlled by adults. The tragedy became clear when Jackie reached adulthood and tried to access his fortune. Much of it was gone. His mother and stepfather had spent heavily, and when Jackie sued, the case exposed how little protection child performers actually had. At the time, the law did not clearly separate a child actor's earnings from parental control. Jackie had worked, but the adults around him had the power. What does fame mean to a child if the money, choices, and protection all belong to someone else? Jackie recovered only a small portion of what he had earned. But his case changed Hollywood history. Public outrage helped lead to the California Child Actors Bill, better known as the Coogan Law, which required part of a child performer's earnings to be protected. Jackie Coogan later rebuilt his career and became known to a new generation as Uncle Fester on The Addams Family. But his childhood story remains painful because he helped make Hollywood rich before Hollywood had rules to protect him. Mildred Frances Cowan Turner. Mildred Frances Cowan Turner was the mother of Lana Turner, one of MGM's most famous glamour stars. Lana was still a teenager when Hollywood began shaping her into a screen image built around beauty, desire, and attention from men much older than she was. Lana's childhood had already been damaged before fame. Her father, John Virgil Turner, was killed when she was young, leaving Mildred to raise her daughter through hardship and uncertainty. When Lana was discovered in Los Angeles as a teenager, the opportunity looked like escape. For a struggling mother and daughter, Hollywood seemed to offer money, safety, and a future. But the tragedy was that fame did not protect Lana. It exposed her. The studio quickly turned her into the sweater girl, a label that reduced a young girl to her body before she had fully grown into adulthood. Mildred did not have the power of a studio boss, but she was the parent closest to Lana. Later accounts often suggest that Lana needed stronger protection than she received as adults around her turned beauty into profit. Who was looking out for Lana Turner when everyone else was looking at her? That lack of protection followed Lana into adulthood. Her relationships became unstable, public, and sometimes dangerous. The most infamous chapter came in 1958, when her teenage daughter Cheryl Crane killed Lana's boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato, during a violent confrontation. The killing was ruled justifiable homicide, but the damage to the family was permanent. Mildred Frances Cowan Turner's story is painful because it is not simply about a mother pushing a child into show business. It is about a mother and daughter entering Hollywood hungry for survival, only to find an industry ready to use beauty before it protected the girl behind it. Joe Ewell Sr. Joe Ewell Sr. was Mickey Rooney's father, a vaudeville performer whose own career faded while his son's career exploded. Mickey was born Joseph Ewell Jr. in 1920, and show business entered his life almost immediately. He was placed on stage as a child, long before he could understand applause contracts or the cost of being the family's main attraction. The tragedy in Mickey's childhood was not only work, it was instability. His parents' marriage broke apart, and Mickey was raised largely by his mother Nellie, who pushed him toward Hollywood. Joe Ewell Sr. remained tied to the story as a father who in many accounts struggled with alcohol, anger, and unreliability. Mickey later described a childhood where performing came before peace. As Mickey became valuable to studios, especially at MGM, the family problems followed the money. He was sold to audiences as Andy Hardy, the cheerful all-American boy with a warm home and a steady moral compass. Off-screen, his real family life was far less secure. Reports over the years have described Joe Ewell Sr. as a man who appeared when money was involved more than when his son needed protection. What happens to a child star when the screen gives him a perfect family, but real life does not? Mickey gives him a perfect family, but real Rooney became one of the biggest young stars in America. But fame did not give him a normal childhood. He worked constantly, carried adult pressure, and grew up inside a business that depended on his smile. Joe Ewell Sr.'s role in this story is painful because absence can damage a child as deeply as force. Mickey Rooney entertained millions while still looking for the stability his own father never truly gave him. Henry Fonda. Henry Fonda was the father of Jane Fonda and Peter Fonda, and one of the most respected actors of classic Hollywood. On screen, he often played decent, steady men. At home, his children later described a father who was difficult to reach emotionally. Fonda's public image was built on restraint, honesty, and quiet strength. Films like Young Mr. Lincoln, The Grapes of Wrath, and later 12 Angry Men made him look like a man guided by principle. But family life did not feel that simple to the people closest to him. Jane Fonda later spoke about growing up with very little affection from her father, saying she did not hear the words many children need most. The deepest break came in 1950, when Jane and Peter's mother, Frances Ford Seymour, died by suicide. Jane was still a teenager. Peter was even younger. A tragedy like that could have brought a family closer, but later accounts suggest silence took over instead. Henry did not openly help his children process what had happened. The pain remained in the house, but it was not easily discussed. How does a child grieve when the surviving parent cannot talk about the loss? Jane spent years trying to understand her father and win his approval. Peter also carried the emotional distance into adulthood. None of this erases Henry Fonda's talent or his place in film history, but it does make the family story harder to ignore. Henry Fonda died in 1982. To audiences, he remained a symbol of American decency. To his children, he was also a father whose silence left wounds that fame could not soften. Rose Thompson Hovick was the mother of June Havoc and Gypsy Rose Lee, two sisters whose childhoods were shaped by vaudeville before either one had real control over her own life. Rose wanted success, and she believed her daughters were the way to get it. The family moved through the entertainment circuit for years, chasing bookings, attention, and survival. June, the younger daughter, was pushed forward as the child star of the act. Her age was often adjusted for professional reasons, and her childhood became tied to performance travel and her mother's demands. Louise, who later became Gypsy Rose Lee, was treated differently at first, more like the less promising sister, waiting in the background. The tragedy was not only that Rose wanted her daughters to perform, it was that she seemed unable to let them belong to themselves. June eventually ran away to escape her mother's control. After that, Rose turned her focus to Louise, helping shape her into Gypsy Rose Lee, one of the most famous burlesque performers in America. What happens to a daughter when her mother sees talent before she sees a child? Rose's forceful personality later became the basis for Mama Rose in the musical Gypsy, one of the most famous stage mother figures in American theater. But behind the legend were real daughters who carried the cost of being pushed, managed, and emotionally claimed. Rose Thompson Hovick died in 1954. Her story remains disturbing because her ambition did help create fame, but it also left behind a family history marked by control escape and children who had to fight for lives outside their mother's dream. Sarah Southern was Elizabeth Taylor's mother, a former stage actress who understood performance before her daughter ever faced a movie camera. Elizabeth was still a child when her beauty became impossible for Hollywood to ignore, and Sarah helped guide her into the studio system. At first, it looked like good fortune. Elizabeth had striking features, unusual eyes, and a screen presence that made adults pay attention. But the tragedy was that attention arrived too early. Childhood became tied to auditions, contracts, publicity, and the constant need to behave like a professional. Sarah was not a violent stage mother in the public record, but she was part of a system that treated Elizabeth's childhood as something that could be shaped, managed, and sold. By the time Elizabeth starred in National Velvet, she was already carrying expectations no young girl should have had to carry. MGM turned her into a polished product, and Sarah remained close to the process. Elizabeth later spoke about feeling that she had grown up too fast, surrounded by adults who saw her beauty as a career before they saw it as a burden. What happens to a child when even her mother begins seeing her through Hollywood's eyes? Elizabeth Taylor became one of the most famous women in the world. She won Oscars, lived through public marriages, scandals, illness, and constant attention. But the foundation of that fame was laid when she was still too young to choose it for herself. Sarah Southern's role is painful because it was quieter than outright cruelty. She helped open the door to stardom, but once Elizabeth walked through it, Hollywood took control of more than a career. It took much of her childhood with it. John Farrow. John Farrow was Mia Farrow's father an Australian-born writer and director who raised his family inside Hollywood. Mia grew up surrounded by film people with a famous mother, Maureen O'Sullivan, and a father whose work and reputation kept the family close to the industry. Her childhood looked privileged from the outside, but it was not simple. Mia was a shy child, and the Farrow home was shaped by strict expectations, religion, discipline, and the pressure of being part of a well-known family. John Farrow was not remembered as a soft, emotionally open father. Later accounts of Mia's early life often describe a household where approval could feel distant and where feelings were not always easy to express. The most frightening chapter came when Mia was 9 and contracted polio. She spent time in isolation during treatment, separated from normal childhood, and forced to face illness at an age when most children still depended completely on comfort and reassurance. That experience left a deep mark on her. She survived, but fear, fragility, and the need for approval followed her into adulthood. What happens to a quiet child when the home around her teaches strength but not tenderness? Mia Farrow later became famous through Peyton Place and Rosemary's Baby, but her early life helps explain part of the vulnerability people later saw in her. She entered fame with beauty sensitivity and a history of emotional uncertainty. John Farrow's place in this story is not about a single public scandal. It is about a father whose distance, discipline, and Hollywood world helped shape a daughter who spent much of her life searching for safety, affection, and a voice of her own. Jack Montgomery and Marion Baxter Montgomery. Jack Montgomery and Marion Baxter Montgomery were the parents of baby Peggy, one of the biggest child stars of the silent film era. Born Peggy Jean Montgomery, she was working in movies before she was even old enough to understand what a movie career meant. Her father Jack had worked around Western films and understood the business better than most parents entering Hollywood. That knowledge should have protected Peggy. Instead, her childhood became controlled by contracts, schedules, publicity, and money. By the early 1920s, baby Peggy was appearing in dozens of short films and becoming a national favorite. Fan letters poured in her face was used to sell products, and studios treated her like a small fortune in curls and costumes. The tragedy was that Peggy was earning adult money while living with no adult protection. Her parents handled the finances, and later accounts describe heavy spending, poor decisions, and little set aside for Peggy's future. She worked constantly, but the wealth did not truly belong to her in any secure way. What does it mean for a child to become rich before she is allowed to own her own life? Her career collapsed while she was still young, partly after conflicts around contracts and salary. By the 1930s, the little girl once promoted as Baby Peggy was no longer a powerful star. She later found herself working as an extra for small pay, while much of the fortune she had earned was gone. Jack and Marion Montgomery's story belongs beside Jackie Coogan's, because it shows the same old Hollywood of the fortune she had earned was gone. Jack and Marion Montgomery's story belongs beside Jackie failure. A child could ache millions, charm the country, and still grow up with almost nothing protected in her name. Lillian Van Ornum Farmer. Lillian Van Ornum Farmer was the mother of Frances Farmer, one of Hollywood's most troubled and misunderstood actresses of the 1930s. Frances had intelligence, beauty, and a sharp, independent streak, but her life became a long battle against studios, courts, doctors, and family control. Frances was born in Seattle and did not enter Hollywood as a quiet, obedient young woman. She had strong opinions, wrote boldly, and resisted being shaped into the kind of star the industry preferred. After early success in films like Come and Get It, her behavior became more erratic, and her fights with authority grew public. Arrests, headlines, and medical judgments soon took over the story. Lillian's role became especially painful when Frances was no longer simply a difficult actress, but a daughter under family and legal control. After Frances received psychiatric treatment in California, Lillian fought to bring her back to Washington and became deeply involved in decisions about her care. Their relationship was filled with conflict. Frances later described her mother as someone she fought with bitterly, not someone who made her feel safe. What happens when this person closest to you becomes part of the system, controlling you? Frances was eventually committed to Western State Hospital in Washington, where she spent years of her life. Some later versions of her story became exaggerated or disputed, but the confirmed truth is already painful enough. A gifted actress lost freedom, career momentum, and trust in the people around her. Lillian Van Ornum Farmer's story is not simple. She may have believed she was saving her daughter. But for Frances, that protection often felt like confinement, and the damage followed her long after Hollywood stopped calling.